Now to our final and most important award this evening. This afternoon, I had a great privilege of being invited, along with Senator Mitchell, to go to Ahern to witness him being presented with the President's Medal by President Higgins. And I discovered afterwards that, that George Mitchell today became the first person in existence to receive a President's Medal from both the President of Ireland and the President of the United States. So I'm going to firstly congratulate him for that. If you want to make peace with your enemy, you have to work with your enemy, then he becomes your partner. So said Nelson Mandela. George J. Mitchell, Jr. is an American lawyer. He's a businessman, a politician, a Democrat. George Mitchell served as a United States Senator from Maine from 1980 to 1995, and as a Senate Majority Leader from 1989 until 1995. Since retiring from the Senate, George Mitchell has taken up a variety of positions in politics and business. He took a leading role in negotiations for peace in Northern Ireland and the Middle East, been specifically appointed United States Special Envoy for Northern Ireland 1995 to 2001 by President Clinton, and as a United States Special Envoy for the Middle East from 2009 to 2011 by President Obama. He was a primary architect, and the primary architect, in our view, of the 1996 Mitchell Principles and the 1998 Good Friday Agreement in Northern Ireland, and was the main investigator into two Mitchell reports, one on the Arab-Israeli conflict in 2001 and one on the use of performance-enhancing drugs in baseball in 2007. Senator George Mitchell served as chairman of the Walt Disney Company from March 2004 until January 2007, and later as chairman of the international law firm DLA Piper. He was the Chancellor of Queen's University in Belfast, Northern Ireland, from 1999 to 2009, and as a special advisor to the Boston Red Sox, who, by the way, Terry, are the owner of Liverpool Football Club, if I'm right. But it is for his unyielding contribution to finding and holding peace in Northern Ireland that we are here tonight.
George Mitchell has this, really deep experience of politics, of people, of difficult situations. I mean, if you've got a tough problem where people seem a long way apart, there's absolutely no one better than him. When you list the people of fundamental importance to peace in Northern Ireland, George Mitchell stands out.
When we came into government in 1997, there was no peace process to speak of because it had been blown off the rails by the Canary Wharf bomb.
The violence was back. The IRA were in full war zone again.
But then on the 20th of July, the IRA announced a ceasefire. So it meant that we were technically back in business.
During critical periods of the process, some very important people became involved, not least whenever President Clinton decided that George would be the person to chair the peace talks in the north of Ireland.
Like all things in Northern Ireland at the time, he wasn't accepted by some sides. When he did take the chair, they tended to look at the roof rather than look at him. And he was dealing with people who had been involved and engaged in violence, the paramilitary groups, the political groups. So it wasn't an easy mindset to try and pull together, but we were lucky that George Mitchell was there.
He was a constant presence at everyone's side, urging and probing and encouraging and helping the rest of us to reach agreement, and to reach an agreement that had some chance of sticking.
He allowed people to speak, even though it might have been a diatribe. He allowed them to speak, and through that he built up, I suppose, a sense of trust.
And there are very few outsiders in the Northern Ireland peace process that really were able both to understand the issues properly and to gain the support and confidence of all the parties in trying to overcome the problems.
He could get Northern Ireland, and that's very important because it's quite difficult to get.
I remember on one occasion when George had left the talks at Castle Buildings on a Friday evening, flew back to Washington, and then arrived back into Belfast on the Sunday evening to meet with us again on Monday. I foolishly on Monday morning said to him, trying to be smart, welcome home, Senator. And he said, Martin, you have a life and this is it. I have a life and this is not it.
The thing about George is that he's a very skilled negotiator and mediator. He's got high intelligence, immense amount of patience, and yet he's not afraid to confront the hard issues.
And the fact that George had brilliantly stated that there was a deadline and that we were out of here was both helpful to everybody and I think did keep us focused. And we didn't reach the deadline, which was midnight on Holy Thursday, but we did get there by 5 o'clock on Good Friday.
The Good Friday Agreement is a masterpiece of drafting. It had to be to take into account the diversity of people who had to be satisfied, sufficiently satisfied. As George would say, there had to be parity of pain and parity of gain for everybody to make it an acceptable deal.
When we broke up on the 10th of April 1998, we didn't complete the agreement until May 2007. And George Mitchell maintained his interest, and then several times when we needed him, returned to play a part during that 9 years.
There aren't words adequate enough to articulate my incredible admiration for Senator Mitchell, but he is an absolutely wonderful human being.
George Mitchell is a very kind and caring person. I think he's a person who you make a friend with, you have a friend for life.
As a small measure of appreciation to Senator Mitchell's contribution to our history, the government's decided to establish a Mitchell Scholarship in his honour, and that is whereby I think it's 12 or 13 young American, really talented young people come to study in Ireland, and I think it's a wonderful lasting memory to George.
In terms of the love and commitment of the people of Ireland to his contribution, I think will live long in the memories.
I would like to pay tribute to Senator George Mitchell, a truly deserving recipient of the Outstanding Contribution to Ireland Award. I am reminded of Senator Mitchell's remarks when he was awarded the Liberty Medal some years ago, when he said, "I believe there's no such thing as a conflict that can't be ended. They are created and sustained by human beings. They can be ended by human beings. No matter how ancient the conflict, no matter how hateful, no matter how hurtful, peace can prevail." This belief in humanity and the capacity for peace is still inspiring today as the parties in Northern Ireland, with the support of the two governments as co-guarantors to the agreement, continue to build on the work of Senator Mitchell using the principles, the values and the institutions of the Good Friday Agreement to advance peace and reconciliation and prosperity on this island. So George, I hope you're having a great evening at the Business and Finance Awards. Your contribution to our country has been immense, and the people of this island owe you a debt of gratitude, which I believe we pay by continuing to observe unwavering support of the principles, the values and the institutions of the Good Friday Agreement that you were so instrumental in creating. Thank you and enjoy your evening. Garamagat agus ganyari lath ashomach.
Yeah. You may notice, I've asked Senator to hold twice, you may notice that there is somebody missing from that video, and at about 5 o'clock this evening I received a message that I must read to you, Senator Mitchell and Heather, if you don't mind. It gives me great pleasure to congratulate you, George, on receiving the Contribution to Ireland Award, Outstanding Contribution to Ireland Award, and join with all of those gathered at the 2013 Business and Finance Awards to recognise your tireless and successful efforts to bring peace to Ireland and build a lasting foundation for security and tolerance. Through the years, we have worked together many times on many issues, and in every negotiation you have shown uncommon skill, tenacity, and bolstered by great patience and a commitment to finding durable solutions. From the Good Friday Agreement to the halls of Queen's University to the establishment of the Mitchell Scholarship Programme, you have brought a commitment to public service and a dedication to diplomacy that have earned you the respect of peers and presidents on both sides of the ocean. You have always had a gift for uniting people, and I think it is safe to say that everyone present tonight shares a deep appreciation for your work you have done in Belfast and beyond, and a profound gratitude for your commitment to a peaceful and prosperous Ireland. Congratulations again, and best wishes to all for a wonderful evening. Simply signed, Bill. William Jefferson Clinton. Ladies and gentlemen, for his outstanding contributions to Ireland, Senator George Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Ian, for that very generous introduction. Thank all of you, ladies and gentlemen, for your presence this evening and for your warm reception. It's really a great honor for me to receive this recognition, particularly in the company of Brian O'Driscoll, Katie Taylor, and Sir Terry Lee. By my count, I'm the 10th speaker tonight. So I feel like Elizabeth Taylor's 10th husband on their wedding night. I know what to do, but I'll be damned if I know how to make it interesting. But Ian, you give everybody the money's worth in these programs. I really must say that I speak so often that for me the highlight of the evening is the introduction. And you did pretty well, Ian. The danger, of course, is that if you hear this stuff often enough, you begin to believe it. So I like to begin with a story about how I was brought down to earth by a group of Irishmen. After I left Northern Ireland, I returned to the United States and I wrote a book about my experience. When it was published, I set out on a book promotion tour around the United States. I received many introductions, invitations. I learned something interesting, that in the United States, there are more Irish American organizations than there are Irish Americans. And every one of them invited me to come to their club. I couldn't take them all, but I did go to many. And as I traveled around the country speaking to various Irish societies, there developed an informal competition among them as to who could give the longest, most fantastic, often ridiculous introductions of me. The proper reaction, of course, would have been humility and ask them to keep it short. My reaction was improper. I encouraged them. One guy spent 35 minutes describing every detail of my life, many of which I had previously not been familiar with. And when he finished, I scolded him because he forgot to mention that in junior high school I received the Science Award. When I got to the last stop, the Stamford, Connecticut Irish Society, I was so impressed with myself that I could barely squeeze my head through the front door. But when I did make it in, the first person I encountered was an elderly woman who rushed up to me very excited, shook my hand vigorously, almost knocked me over, and said, "I want you to know I don't live anywhere near here. I drove 3.5 hours just to come here to shake your hand, to tell you what a great man you are, and to ask you, please, will you sign my poster? And I said, sure. And she handed me what was essentially a political poster with a big photograph on it and a pen. I looked at it and I said, I'm happy to sign it, but before I do, I think I should tell you something. She said, what is it? I said, I'm not Henry Kissinger. It was a portrait, a picture of Kissinger. She said, well, you're not. She said, well, who are you anyway? And when I told her, she said, oh, that's terrible. She said, I drove 3.5 hours to meet a great man named Henry Kissinger, and all I've got is a nobody like you. I said, well, I'm sorry you feel so bad. I wish there's something I could do to make you feel better. She said, well, there is. I said, what is it? She leaned forward. I leaned forward. Our foreheads were touching. And she said in a low and conspiratorial voice, nobody will ever know the difference. She said, will you sign Henry Kissinger's name to my poster? So I did. And somewhere today in eastern Connecticut, it's hanging on a living room wall. Now here's the best part of the story. About a year ago, Henry and I appeared together at a function in New York. Big crowd of business men and women. We had 3 chairs up on the table, a moderator and Kissinger and I, and the moderator asked us questions about China and the Middle East. And I thought it'd be a good time to tell this story, which I did. The crowd loved it. Kissinger liked it. We had a good program, and when we left, we were in Manhattan in a high-rise building. I found myself in the elevator with Henry going down. He said to me, I've appeared with you many times. He said, I heard you speak often when you were the leader of the Senate. He said, but I have to tell you, I've never heard you speak better than you did tonight. I said, really? I said, what was it? My comments on China, the Middle East? No. He said, it was that story you told in the beginning. He said, that is really a great story. You should tell it all around the world. And so I keep a list. I do. I keep a list. I told it last week in Sydney and Melbourne, Australia. I told it in London, and now I can check off Dublin, and when I see Henry, he's going to be very, very pleased. Well, let me say that this event and this organization send an important message throughout the world about the resilience, the energy, and the talent of the people and the business and finance community of Ireland. They benefit from the close friendship in both a business and a personal sense between Ireland and the United States. Thousands of Irish men and women here in Dublin and all over this island are employed at American-owned businesses. That's a good thing, and fortunately, it's a two-way street. Across America, from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean, men and women of Irish citizenship and Americans of Irish heritage are working and building, creating jobs, communities, deepening our ties, and enhancing both societies. There are right now 200,000 people working in Irish-owned businesses in America, and that number is growing every day. We all should support, nurture, and expand our relationship. Both of our countries and many others have been through a difficult time in the last few years, and there's still much to do. But we both can and we should look forward with optimism and with confidence in our future. I want to say just a brief word about Northern Ireland. I love the place and its people. They're warm and energetic. They're also very talkative and occasionally combative. In fact, I'll just recount one incident from the very first day of the negotiations. One of the delegates, a great guy named David Irvine, said to me in a loud voice, "Senator, if you are to be of any use to us, there's one thing you must know." I said, "What is it?" He said, "We in Northern Ireland would drive 100 miles out of our way to receive an insult." I never forgot him, and that helped me along the way. I want to close with a few personal remarks, beginning with an introduction of my wife. We were married when I retired from the Senate. When I proposed, I promised her that my political and traveling days were over. Then, as luck would have it, President Clinton asked me to go to Northern Ireland. For just a few months, he said, "I believe in the American dream because I have lived it. An important part of that dream is that with the benefits of freedom and opportunity come responsibility on each individual. And when your president asks you to serve your country, you do so willingly and gratefully." Heather supported my going to Northern Ireland, which I did within just a few weeks of our marriage. And she remained steadfast in that support, even though it turned out to be 5 years. 5 of the most difficult but rewarding years of my life. Heather, would you please stand and be recognized? Many Irish men and women have thanked me for my work in Northern Ireland, as you have done this evening. But it is I who should be grateful, and I am. My father's parents were born and lived most of their lives in Ireland. Just over 100 years ago, they sailed to America, seeking a better life, part of the great human tide that swept from Ireland to the far corners of the earth. History is written by those who succeed, and there were many who did and who deserve our admiration. But there were also many who left a hard life in Ireland only to find another hard life in America. My father was born in Boston, but he never knew his parents. His mother died, his father couldn't care for their children, and they were all raised in orphanages. After several years, my father was adopted by an elderly, childless couple who lived in the state of Maine. They were not Irish, but they too had hard lives. After just a couple of years of elementary school, my father left to begin a long and low-paying life of labor, ending up as a janitor at our local school. He met and married my mother, herself an immigrant from Lebanon. She could not read or write, and she spent 40 years working the night shift in textile mills while raising 5 children. My parents had no material possessions, but they had one important goal in life, that their children could get an education and lead lives better than theirs. Because of their efforts and because of the openness of American society, I, their son, was able to get an education and ultimately to become the majority leader of the United States Senate. My father knew nothing about his heritage. I never ever heard him say the word Ireland. So when I came here at President Clinton's request, I had no sense of my father's heritage or of what it means to be Irish. I've since learned, and for that, I'm deeply grateful. I'm an American, very proud of my country, and always will be. But a large part of my heart and of my emotions will forever be here on this beautiful island, and especially in Northern Ireland. One of the greatest gifts I've ever received is to be comforted by the thought that right now and forever, my beloved Father is looking down from above and saying, I too am proud to be an American, but I'm also thankful that through my son, I've also learned what it means to be an Irishman. Thank you, and good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could, in holding Senator Mitchell for one more second, he beat me to it because when I wrote to him in March and asked him would he consider coming to Ireland so we could host this dinner for him, I also mentioned that we need to honour Heather in a very serious way. So we didn't know quite how to do it, but I know her love of literature, and I know how close she is to Colin McCann, a mutual friend, and so forth. And only last week, I got a call from a rare bookstore and he said, "Do you remember that gift you gave to President Clinton?" And I said there were only 3 that I could find in Ireland. He said, "We found another one." And this is a collection, I think quite timely, of, it's a very rare edition, very rare, only 200 copies, of Seamus Heaney's poems and a memoir. It's illustrated by Henry Pearson, with an introduction by Thomas Flanagan and prefaced by Seamus Heaney, and signed by all 3. It's extremely rare, and I thought, maybe it's a piece of Ireland. In a year we lose Seamus, but we gain people like George Mitchell. I'd like to present this to Heather. Could I ask Heather to come to the stage? I think it's only right if we could do that. Ladies and gentlemen, George and Heather Mitchell.